So if you've begun to experience a little bit of that transition where you're coming down out of the hypervigilance of the trauma and feeling more of the deeper, intense emotions of grief, then maybe it's time to start doing, in a really intentional way, some formal grief work. So here's some ideas for that. One thing that you can do is a loss timeline. And there are a few different ways of doing this, but here's the one I usually assign to clients. Make two timelines. One is life as you knew it, the story you knew. The second is what you found out. And when you make them, don't just write them down on pieces of paper. Create them out of something. So I've had clients use index cards and yarn. One client actually took t-shirts from different phases of her life and created a rope out of these t-shirts and then pinned to it pictures of the life she knew and what was happening that she didn't know about. And then begin to take one piece at a time, just one, not the whole thing at once, but one piece at a time. Think about what it means to bring those together. Now that sounds excruciating and painful, and it is, but it's facing it. What does it mean that these things coexisted? And I would recommend you do that with a group, with support, with someone else who you can process that with, who can hold that with you. So various forms of timeline work can be really helpful. Another thing you can do is use art. Draw your grief, draw a picture. You don't have to be a great artist. It's not about that. It's about connecting with another part of yourself. And maybe, I've seen pictures of landscapes that are devastated. I've seen pictures of houses. I've seen self-portraits. I've seen so many different things. It doesn't really matter what you draw as long as it's an expression of what you're feeling as you're trying to make sense of and make meaning out of what's happened to you. So just spending some time with creativity and then taking that and again, getting support around the processing of that, sharing that with a group, sharing that with a safe person. Journaling can be effective, but they've actually done a lot of research about what it is that makes journaling effective and how to do effective journaling. Journaling that is not effective is either where you journal for like an hour at a time and it's actually leaving you more revved up and more wound up and more on edge than you were before, and then you just like put it down and either stay in that place or try to stuff it. Here are some instructions for effective journaling. Journal for 15 minutes a day for 4 days in a row. Okay, so you're going to set a timer and you're going to do free association journaling. So a prompt might start with this. As I remember my 10th anniversary, when I also consider what I know now about what was really happening, I feel ... and just let yourself write. Free association, 15 minutes. You do that 4 days in a row. Now, each day, spend some time transitioning afterwards. Don't just shut the journal and move on. Actually take time to transition. You can do that by listening to a song or doing some mindfulness work or some breath work. But take a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes to transition afterwards. If you want, you could add some bilateral stimulation. If you're familiar with EMDR, you know about bilateral stimulation. So if you've got like tappers or something like that, or music that does bilateral stimulation, left, right, you could be listening to that while you do the journaling. So 15 minutes a day, 4 days in a row, transition afterwards, maybe add that bilateral stimulation. That research shows can really make a difference in moving you along in that processing of emotion. Look for a metaphor, all right? Is there a metaphor that you can really latch onto that helps to communicate your experience of grief? One couple that I worked with talked about standing over the grave together. I've got another couple who talk about a wall in their home that they wanted to paint and they never painted it. And so they refer to it as the unpainted wall or whatever. So, but there are several unpainted wall moments. So listen for within yourself, within your conversations. Is there something that can become symbolic that you keep coming back to? That's connecting these various experiences around a theme, around this metaphor and the meaning of that metaphor. And it's through the connection of the experiences that the new story begins to emerge. Read poetry, read plays, dive into literature. That can also open us up to new ways of seeing and processing experiences. And then one last thing is there a ritual of remembrance? Do you need to call your support group together, your friends together, and have a little funeral service, a memorial service of some sort for some piece of what you're grieving? Is there a way of marking reminders monthly or yearly or to whatever frequency seems appropriate to you around significant days or significant events that happen? So those are some different ways that you can do grief work. Also look for grief groups that are betrayal trauma informed. They're certainly out there, and the APSATS directory is filled with therapists and coaches who know how to move through this work. Like I said, grief is a central part of the APSATS multidimensional partner trauma model. And so if this sounds like something you're ready to do, find someone to walk with you along this journey. It can really help you to move through it. I'm not going to say pain-free, because there's going to be pain, but hopefully in a way that is most effective and that maximizes your efforts and that gets you to that place of growth and newness sooner rather than later, though we're all going to take whatever time it takes.